Welcome, young and old. Welcome to Sunday, the something of something in the year 20-something. We've all lost count. Nobody knows. But I know that we're here right now in this moment, about to open the book of Proverbs. And I've got an inkling today. We're going to also open the book of Ecclesiastes. Welcome on into the Bible Hour via Park End Studios. It's day 85 of reading our Bible. Let's shrink this carefully. And then what we need to do is get the Bible up there, like that. We need to put it by here. And we need to do that. And we also need to move that. Hey, the Whittingtons in the house. I'm Petty Bar, and I've almost seen every Whittington today at some point, or at least had communications with. Petty Bar's tonight's sponsor. Ben Ricketts in the house. Yeah, we had fun with the youth stuff this morning. What's beeping? Nothing should be beeping at this time. Hold on. I need to put that on silent. And I'm out of here. You have not seen Poppy, that is correct. She refused to join us this morning. Paula Barrett, even all, love the contributions, even well and all. He did say nearly all the Whittingtons, that's correct. Yeah, this evening's sermon was so jam-packed. We're teetering on the edge of being too long now. We've got so much high-quality content. What a good problem to have. Well, I'll save my analysis of the evening service when more people trickle in about 7 minutes. But it's very true that a lot of people, for a lot of hard work behind the scenes, we can always get the sermon. Believe me, many times that has crossed my mind. The other thing is, I'm increasingly looking like Beaker from the Muppets. When it switched from Neil to me, it was almost like we entered some sort of cartoon on the Cartoon Network. What are you going to do, eh? What are you going to do? You just got to roll with it. Got to work with what you got. Before we jump into an evening service analysis, and I make some semi-disparaging comments about other streams that I've seen this evening, the rest of us can turn to Proverbs chapter 31. Yeah, you got it. If you look like a Muppet, you've just got to work with it. That's what I mean. Don't go there, says Ricky B. No, I'll make it like No, don't worry. I know what you think, Ricky, but it'll be all right. There's a Muppet in all of us. Hey, we should all send in to like the Facebook chat what Muppet we most look like. Hold on a minute. Let me just get mine and I'll put a little link there for you. It's funny looking at him now. There's one of me preaching, look. Okay, now let's just see I get the right link here so the right thing comes up. Yeah, all right. There you go, the one with the arms up on the side. I'm just saying I'm increasingly looking like, oh, I can't post a link because it's over 200 characters. Hold on, let's try this way. Link copied. All right, let's try this one. Yeah. That's it. That is Beaker preaching. Welcome on in, Sue Roberts. Welcome on in, Diane Robbins. Have I turned the mic on? Yep, the mic is on. Yeah. Yeah, Sue Roberts. We'll all, after this, go looking for the Muppet we most look like. Hey, Chris Williams in the house. Let's check if Cara is also in the house. Good evening. Yes, she is. Now, you've got to look like them. You can't just decide which one you want to be like. And you don't look like Miss Piggy, Sue Roberts. In 4 minutes, we will be beginning Proverbs chapter 31, and we will close off this Lord's Day. I can behave like it. This Lord's Day with the last proverb, and then we'll enter the manic depressing stage of Solomon's literature. Although maybe it's, well, Solomon's depressing literature. Although, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not Solomon. Maybe it's not depressing. We'll find out. Okay, so before we jump in, I love this evening's service. Thank you so much, everyone, for... There is actually hours and hours put into making our online content work. So you know who you are. And if you make a cup of cold water for someone in Jesus' name, it's as if you do it for him himself. So hard work in the life of church is noticed, and it's no small thing. So well done to everyone. Very funny cross-fade into me dancing, which I did not give permission to, and I have filed a lawsuit about for using my content. So that was good because we were all watching it live. So that was funny. Neil, I loved how Neil led it. There was this like just a sense of seriousness and humility I got. And I loved hearing Neil's story. We'll get to hear the long version of it one day if he agrees to it. I know he does get nervous doing that sort of thing. So well done, Neil. And I've asked Parking admin Nikki H to form a little list for other people to lead it. Less of me, more of others. That's what we want. It was great to see Malcolm again, and Harold George was very kind to us here in the Bible Hour, and I hope his sermon went well tonight in the church around the corner. I better check chat. Hold on. Hey, McDonald in the house. Hey, McDonald, I put your new president on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Colleen Rooney Batstone. Hold on, what? Do I look like Colleen Rooney? Oh yeah, what I was also going to say was I trawl around other live streams, and it's funny listening to some preachers who think they've got the monopoly on truth, and the way they're a bit nasty about other churches who have lost the vision. But what's interesting is in what I found in common ministries trawling around the web of ministers having a go at other churches who have lost it and they need to get back to whatever that preacher's view of Christianity is they don't actually focus on Jesus. I'm amazed at how many churches don't focus on Jesus, particularly the ministers. It's like you've got one person down here on the left wing saying sin. You can't know Jesus unless it's sin. It's all sin, 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 sin. It's like, all right, dude, but Jesus handles the sin in order for us to get to know Jesus. So don't make a Christ out of your sin. Tell us more about Jesus, the purpose of it. And it's just interesting how that person and that ilk of Christianity would think that a more Jesus-centered view, which talks more about Jesus than anything else, has lost its way. And then the other side of my trawling, you've got the people obsessed with gifts of the Spirit or church government, or having a go at people who don't necessarily make much scope for gifts in theirs. And it's like everybody thinks they've got the monopoly on what truth is. So I was just thankful to tune in to hours where like the prayers were actually getting on to talking about Jesus. The liturgy was about the glory of Jesus. 1 Kings 8:19 is all about Elijah meeting Jesus. And yes, we are to mention sin and have theological positions in the life of the church about charismata and the gifts. But it's like, it's all to prop up and get to know the Lord Jesus Christ. That's all I wanted to say. I just think keep focused on Jesus more than anything else. And then a fly on the houses of people who think you've lost the way. That was the other one. One sermon all about evangelicalism. And if it's not evangelical, you're dead. And it's like, dude, you haven't mentioned Jesus once. Jesus is the heart of evangelicalism, and you haven't mentioned him once. So delete, erase history so they don't suggest I watch any more of the same. Here in the Bible Hour, we do not claim a monopoly of truth, but we are hoping not to focus on anything other than the heart of the gospel message, the Lord Jesus Christ and him crucified and his bride, the ancient church. MacDonald, today has been a historical day for Malawi. Our sixth president, Rev. Lazarus Chakwera, was inaugurated into office. Thanks all for your prayers for Malawi. Well, I don't know how many people in Bible Hour or Park End Church prayed for you, but I tell you this, the Batstone family have been praying for you, Mucky D, and Malawi. And I'm sure others have too. All right, ladies and gents. Let us depart thenceforth and evermore into Proverbs 31. Let me give a little spiel about Proverbs 31 because I think it can be used for people who want to slightly oppress women. So Proverbs 31, King Lemuel is probably Solomon. Like a little special name. This is probably Bathsheba to Solomon. And let me tell you what it's not. It is not a checklist for how to become the perfect woman. And women, when they teach that, I think are putting perhaps a bit of a large burden on their backs, especially when it's like that she doesn't stop working. Like 24 hours a day, she's working and prospering. It's like, all right, and like she is the perfect woman. I think the culmination of the book of Proverbs is this. We have seen a boy honoring the parents, growing in wisdom, developing into this king who is wise, and instructions on how to flourish. We've always got the father teaching the Christ, his Christ in mind. And now what happens is, at the end of this book, this man king has a bride. And the bride all the way through the ancient scriptures is the church. And I think before women go rooting around here on how to be a better woman, and I'm not saying if you adopt some of these qualities and even aim for them, that's a bad thing. But I'm saying, I think this is about church, because churches always work across the world. They flourish. They're protected. They're prayerful. They take pride in their husband, and the husband takes pride in her. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Proverbs 31 with church in mind. The sayings of King Lemuel contain this message which his mother taught him. O my son, O son of my womb, O son of my vows, do not waste your strength on women, on those who ruin kings. That's quite a personal note. Bathsheba knows all about ruined relationships when kings go after too many women. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, to guzzle wine. Rulers should not crave alcohol. For if they drink, they may forget the law and not give justice to the oppressed. Alcohol is for the dying, and wine for those in bitter distress. Let them drink to forget their poverty and remember their troubles no more. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless, and see that they get justice. Who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband can trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She is like a merchant ship, bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her servant girls. She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She is energetic and strong, a hard worker. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. Her hands are busy spinning thread, her fingers twisting fiber. She extends a helping hand to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes. She makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. Her husband is well known at the city gates, where he sits with the other civic leaders. She makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to the merchants. So not only is she an absolutely perfect mother at home, she also runs successful businesses outside as well. And she's up before everyone. She goes to sleep after everyone. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. I just think that is one of the best chapters ever about church. Ricky B, verse 10, me. Who can find a virtuous woman capable of a wife? She is more precious than rubies. All right, well, hey, I'm not going to disagree with you there, Ricky B. The more I get to know Paula B, what a gem. But I do think this is one step even higher. Jesus finds a bride. Ricky B, drunk. Church brings good. Church works for her, for the family, for her husband. Church rises early. Literally, New Zealand churches have just risen, and the other ones are going to bed late. Church is energetic. Church lamps burn late into the night. Church doesn't fear things. Our husband sits at the civic gates and everybody knows him. Church children stand in awe of what they're a part of. Church fears the Lord and will be greatly praised. Either that, or I'll, next time Rita's out of line, I will just read this to her until she breaks and I have the victory. One or the other. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the book of Proverbs, the son into the king, into the marriage harmony. Jesus is the man of the Proverbs on our hope, and our hope rests on him. And now you better get the pint of whiskey ready as we creep into the book of Ecclesiastes. Oh, the vanity of Ecclesiastes. Don't get a pint of whiskey, Pocket. I just remembered who I'm talking to here, and half of them probably have gone to get a pint of whiskey. Poor Rita, what has she done to be married to Owen? Hey, Rita's mum watches this, and I'm pretty sure she often asks the same thing. Let me just say a few things about Ecclesiastes, because different English versions don't help the matter here. For example, in the NIV, there's a whole chunk about eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Occasionally in the Bible, that's used as like for foolish people who aren't prepping their souls for the future. But in Ecclesiastes, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, when you're going to find there's a massive chunk on it. It's actually in the positive, and the NIV renders it in the negative, as if it's a bad way. But it's actually in the positive, because godly people can celebrate good things that Jesus has got them. So it's a tricky one, Ecclesiastes, for things like that. But Ecclesiastes, there's this word Hebel, which is like vanity. It's going to come up a lot, but it's also can be translated vapor, meaningless, absurd, senseless, or like breath, futile. Probably, I haven't looked at it, yes, but it's probably going to be vanity or vain or hopeless endeavor. There's the preacher in this called, and it's probably Solomon that wrote this, but anyway, the preacher in here is called, or the teacher, Koheleth in the Hebrew, means the one who addresses an assembly. Now, ecclesia in the Greek is assembly or gathering of people, hence it's got this name Ecclesiastes. So this is to church, the gathering, the ancient church, and we're listening to a teacher who would know his audience, the Jewish audience, and would know that wisdom is the crown jewel to have in life, proper wisdom. But he also like puts a downer on things a lot as well. Yes, I think we'll leave it there, really. Basically, what we're going to see is all is meaningless unless it's in the path towards God, towards the Lord in church, and that's the way to real joy. And any pleasure outside of the everlasting treasure and player. Koheleth, not like that. No, Qoheleth, I think. One who addresses an assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, let's jump into Ecclesiastes chapter 3 from probably Solomon. Literally thousands of hours of research over my life, and I can summarize it all on looking at who wrote books of the Bible, and it comes out in a sentence: it was probably Solomon. These are the words of the teacher, King David's son, who ruled in Jerusalem. You're like, well, Owen, is obviously Solomon. Yeah, but it might not be, all right? I mean, it might be a bit, but not for that long. Just, it doesn't matter. Hey, look at Ricky B. Teacher, Koheleth, Ecclesia, to the assembly. Everything is meaningless. This is a favorite for Welsh people. Everything is meaningless, says the teacher. Completely meaningless. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises and the sun sets, then hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and then turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Or, in more famous terms, there's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes people say, here is something new, but actually it's old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. I, the teacher, was king of Israel, and I lived in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. I soon discovered that God has dealt a tragic existence to the human race. I observed everything going on under the sun, and really, it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. So there's a lens here of without Christ and church, and it's not all that. So hang on. What is wrong cannot be made right. What is missing cannot be recovered. I said to myself, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have greater wisdom and knowledge than any of them. So I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness and folly. But I learned firsthand that pursuing all this is like chasing the wind. The greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. Ricky B, my pint of whiskey is laced with cyanide. Yeah, it might as well be if you're not a Christian and part of church. But you are. So just hold back, Ricky B. There are glimmers of light. And there's even a bit coming up that loads of people put in their weddings, so it can't all be doom and gloom. Welcome on into the Bible Hour. If you're just trickling in, we are looking at how everything is meaningless, including this Bible Hour. Or is it? Oh, let me tell you something about Tremple Longman, who I would not encourage people quickly to go and read, but I have. He's a bit of a dodgy one, Tremple Longman. Tremple Longman argues about chapter 2 that some in the assembly would have been seeking to be wise outside of belief in the Lord and therefore finding it a vain endeavor because it brings no certainty of the afterlife. And I think Tremple Longman is right here. I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And while I was still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. Jordan Peterson, the modern anthropologist and philosopher who's popular at the moment in Canada, his big thing is if you go looking for happiness, you won't find it. It's ever elusive. But if you go on a worthy endeavor of something else, happiness will become a byproduct of that and you will become happy. Solomon said that like 1 billion years ago. After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. Not Tremper. I don't even know how you know what he looks like. So I don't know. I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I mean, how many even church members still fall into the trap of thinking the more material stuff I get, the happier I'll be? It's like, no, dude, the happiest people ever have often got nothing because Christ is their all in all. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also enlarged herds and flocks more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines. I had everything a man could desire. Have you actually found a picture of tremble. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I've lost it. I've lost chat. I'm going back. I'm going back in. So I became greater than all those who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work and reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless. Like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. I see what's going on. This is some sort of academic joke about trempers, or something, which is probably a posh name for some sort of plate that I've never heard of, and I've missed it again. I'm on to you. So I decided to compare wisdom with foolishness and madness, for who can do this better than I, the king? I thought wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they are going, but fools walk in the dark. Yet I saw that the wise and the foolish share the same fate. Both will die. So I said to myself, since I will end up the same as the fool, what's the value of my wisdom? This is also meaningless. For the wise and the foolish both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. So I came to hate life because everything done here under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. I came to hate all my hard work here on earth, for I must leave others everything I have earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I have gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. How meaningless! So I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all my hard work in this world. What's funny is, if you picture the assembly that has gathered to listen to this teacher, it's like you're just sitting there looking up going, is he all right? He's down today, isn't he? But it's actually really clever, and it can fire us back up to the meaningful life. That sort of approach. Maybe next Sunday, that's all I'll do. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill and then must leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It is all meaningless. So I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. Hang on, a U-turn. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. But if a sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. This too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Oh, he almost got out. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on in. Welcome on in if you're just trickling in to the Bible Hour. Welcome on in. So remember, yes, there's this breath thing that can also be, the vanity thing can be breath as well. And it's interesting because James picks up on that theme about how life is transitory. We're here in the morning and gone, cut down like grass. We're like a vapor. which vanishes. That's James 4 or 5, isn't it? 5. But 1 Timothy, Park End Admin, can you post 1 Timothy 4:4? Because though we are a vapor, if we are plugged into Jesus and church, our life is not meaningless. 1 Timothy 4:4, please. Any version. And if you remember Jeremiah 31, our lives were fashioned and purchased and loved before time. So there is, though we are vapor, a marked difference between a believer and a Jesus hater. That's going to come through now. And I think he's going to prep us for death as well. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. What do people really get for all their hard work? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and to enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are the gifts of God. MacDonald, chapter 3 is a famous one. It is famous. For every creature of God is good, and nothing to be refused if it be received with thanksgiving. For everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected with thanksgiving. Yeah. And I know that whatever God does is final. Nothing can be added to it or taken from it. God's purpose is that people should fear him. What is happening now has happened before, and what will happen in the future has happened before, because God makes the same things happen over and over again. That's another thing I found trawling the sermons. To fear the Lord is to be in awe of Jesus, obsessed with Jesus, to obey Jesus. And so many churches, that's not enough, and that's not the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord for so many is like dress a certain way and speak a certain way. And they could meet people who are on fire for the Lord Jesus Christ, and that just won't cut it with them, because periphery things have been elevated above the love of Jesus when it comes to the fear of the Lord. And I really will, all my days of being at Park End, I'm going to fight that sort of Christianity with my dying breath. That sort of Christianity is meaningless. I also noticed that under the sun there is evil in the courtroom. Yes, even the courts of law are corrupt. I said to myself, in due season, God will judge everyone, both good and bad, for all their deeds. I also thought about the human condition, how God proves to people that they are like animals. For people and animals share the same fate, both breathe and both must die. So people have no real advantage over the animals. How meaningless. Both go to the same place. They came from the dust and they return to dust. For who can prove that the human spirit goes up and the spirit of animals goes down to the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for people than to be happy in their work. That is our lot in life. And no one can bring us back to see what happens after we die. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the halfway mark, just after actually. Go take 85 seconds, go and take a long, deep reflection about everything which is manically depressing around you, and then come back and see if Solomon will help you. Grab a sandwich while you're at it. Petty bar, my fear is Jesus saying, I never knew you. Yeah, that is a scary one, isn't it? But in my experience, most people who fear that are the ones who aren't going to hear that. The ones who never worry about where they stand with God and just think they can swan in and out of his presence and they're just amazing men. And that's more of concern for me. Yes, you can have 95 seconds, Parker and admin. You can, but whatever it is you need to do. We will come back at Ecclesiastes 4. MacDonald, I think of some men of God who even changed their voice to convince people that they are anointed. Yeah, I know that, Mucky D. I know that. Malcolm, the Park End legend who has developed a cult following in lockdown. And I get thousands of hate mails every week, death threats, if I am not going to include a Malcolm update. That's all of your fans. They've got mine and Ricky B's email address. We will both testify. We've had to put spam filters in and everything just because of the amount of your followers who are demanding every week another update from Malcolm's Garden. Arguably, I've heard the case made, the finest bit of ministry that has ever existed in Park End's history. I'm just saying that's what I've heard. I've read it on BBC Wales. They've picked it up. Malcolm and his garden. My kids love it. And they really follow those bits, actually, because it's short and to the point, and you bring out some spiritual gem just from stuff that they're interested in, like wood and stairs and stuff like that. Anyway, yes, all that said, you can be the Cookie Monster. It is the reality of death that makes rational the way of life the Koheleth, the teacher, commends to all his readers, with his focus on living each moment of life joyfully before God, rather than on the pursuit of wisdom, wealth, or any other human end that comes under the heading chasing after the wind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on back to Ecclesiastes 4. Literally, the assembly, the church. That is why, by the way, the study of church is, well, you know it. I don't need to tell you. In the Greek, again, I observed all the oppression that takes place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed with no one to comfort them. The oppressors have great power and their victims are helpless, so I concluded that the dead are better off than the living. But most fortunate of all are those who are not yet born, for they have not seen all the evil that is done under the sun. Then I observed that most people are motivated to success because they envy their neighbors. This too is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Fools fold their idle hands, leading them to ruin. And yet, better to have one handful with quietness than two handfuls with hard work and chasing the wind. I observed yet another example of something meaningless under the sun. This is the case of a man who is all alone without a child or a brother, yet who works hard to gain as much wealth as he can. But then he asks himself, who am I working for? Why am I giving up so much pleasure now? It is all so meaningless and depressing. Two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Thanks be to God for the church. How many times, even on chat, have we thanked other church members for helping us out in some way that day? Likewise, two people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. One person, a second person, and a third person. You've heard it at weddings, folks, and now you've heard it at Bible Hour. It is better to be a poor but wise youth than an old, foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a youth could rise from poverty and succeed. He might even become king, though he has been in prison. Let me just tell you something on a personal note. Let me get personal. How Jesus helps me in my marriage. So if I was married without Jesus, I would be the worst husband that ever existed and would probably be divorced now and abandoned just because I'm a sinner and a bad one. But I tell you how that third person has helped strengthen the cord against being broken in the last week even is the book of Proverbs really spoke to me, and I've made a list of certain ones that spoke to me. I've been cutting and pasting them into my Evernote, which is on my phone, and throughout the day, like when I feel like sinfully, just sinful, and might otherwise have indulged in that, and whatever forms that takes, like frustration or temper, whatever. I've been helped a lot by looking at those proverbs and again about kindness and how violence is not violence. Like I wouldn't be violent, but you know what I mean. Like that attitude of selfishness is wrong. So yeah, I am a living testimony of three or even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken, because that's the word of the Lord speaking today in 2020. It is better to be poor but wise, be a poor but wise youth than an old and foolish king who refuses all advice. Such a youth could rise from poverty and succeed. He might even become king, though he has been in prison. But then everyone rushes to the side of yet another youth who replaces him. Endless crowds stand around him, but then another generation grows up and rejects him too. So it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the fourth. It only just seems like we've reached the halfway mark. Time flies when you're reading manic, depressing literature. Take 30 seconds. And shortly we will be commencing with chapter 5. Chris Henry, I was looking forward to Proverbs from the outset, but it way exceeded my expectations. I'm really glad about that. It did with me as well. I think it does help when the focus is on that righteous one who gets mentioned, that word who is a he throughout, that boy who grows to be a king and wins his bride. I don't think there's a better or more accurate way to take the book of Proverbs, unless you're going to try and teach that good works earns your way to heaven. That's the only other alternative to look at the book of Proverbs, that there's a book wedged in the middle of the Bible, which is just a self-help, get yourself to heaven, self-improvement tips, which is a direct contrary confliction to the rest of the message of the Bible, that Christ comes down to us and rescues us and lifts us up. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Approaching God with care. As you enter the house of God, keep your ears open and your mouth shut. It is evil to make mindless offerings to God. Don't make rash promises, and don't be hasty in bringing matters before God. After all, God is in heaven and you're here on earth, so let your words be few. So basically, take church life seriously. Of course, we remember Psalms like make a joyful noise unto the Lord and all that stuff. The writer here is getting at meaningless worship, vain babbling, or like MacDonald just said, changing your voice to convince people that you're anointed. Too much activity gives you restless dreams. Too many words make you a fool. When you make a promise to God, don't delay in following through, for God takes no pleasure in fools. Keep all the promises you make to him. It is better to say nothing than to make a promise and not keep it. Don't let your mouth make you sin, and don't defend yourself by telling the temple messenger that the promise you made was a mistake. That would make God angry, and he might wipe out everything you have achieved. Talk is cheap. Like daydreams and other useless activities. Fear God instead. Don't be surprised if you see a poor person being oppressed by the powerful and if justice is being miscarried throughout the land. For every official is under orders from higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy. Even the king milks the land for his own profit. Those who love money will never have enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. So what good is wealth? Except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers. Or, in the words of the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, and Puff Daddy, mo money, mo problems. People who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much, but the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. There is another serious problem I have seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the saver. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour and everything is lost. In the end, there's nothing left to pass on to one's children. We all come to the end of our lives as naked and empty-handed as on the day we were born. We can't take our riches with us. And this too is a very serious problem. People leave the world no better off than when they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the wind. Throughout their lives, they live under a cloud, frustrated, discouraged, and angry. Jesus says that, doesn't he? Without me, you are condemned already. You just live in that condemned life. You need life from me. Even so, I have noticed one thing at least that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy it. To enjoy your work and accept your lot in life. This is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they make no time to brood over the past. Big stuff in the Bible hour. Ecclesiastes chapter 6. There is another serious tragedy I have seen under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives some people great wealth and honor and everything they could ever want, but then he doesn't give them the chance to enjoy these things. They die, and someone else, even a stranger, ends up enjoying. This is meaningless, a sickening tragedy. A man might have 100 children and live to be very old, but if he finds no satisfaction in life and doesn't even get a decent burial, it would have been better for him to be born dead. His birth would have been meaningless and he would have ended in darkness. He wouldn't even have had a name and he would never have seen the sun or known of its existence. Yet he would have had more peace than in growing up to be an unhappy man. He might live 1,000 years twice over, but if still not find contentment. And since he must die like everyone else, well, what's the use? All people spend their lives scratching for food, but they never seem to have enough. So are wise people really better off than fools? Do poor people gain anything by being wise and knowing how to act in front of others? Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing the wind. Everything has already been decided. It was known long ago what each person would be, so there's no use in arguing with God about your destiny. The more words you speak, the less they mean. So what good are they? In a few days of our meaningless lives, who knows how our days can be spent? Our days are like a shadow. Who can tell what will happen on this earth after we are gone? Ricky B making Monty Python references. Never seen it. Sorry, not my cup of tea. Hal George, so sorry I'm very late. Everyone, I want to say thanks for praying for me today. Hey, Hal George, I prayed for you when you asked. And we really liked, well, I certainly did, and my family did, liked your little bit in the evening service. So thanks for that. That was great. You and Malcolm. Howell, as a potential future Bible teacher, I think you need to go back, and especially because you're married, just rewatch the first bit of this stream as we jumped into Proverbs 31, just in case you end up suffocating your wife into unbearable burdens like many Bible teachers do when they approach Proverbs 31. Just have a sneaky peek at the start of the screen about Proverbs 31, and then even if you're hanging about for the rest of Ecclesiastes, the start of Ecclesiastes, Proverbs 31 was written about. Okay, you need to go back, Hal George, and just watch our bit about Proverbs 31. MacDonald, verse 10 is controversial. Let's have a look. Everything has already been decided. It was no long ago what each person would be, so there's no use in arguing about God's destiny. Hey, well, thankfully, we're going to get to Jonah in a bit. And he has a full-on argument about his destiny, and we're going to learn a lot about that. No, honest, she's a mate. No, honest, Hal George. Honest. Go have a look later on. Calvinist Methodist is based on this. So the thing with the teacher, the Koheleth here, he's deliberately framing life without Jesus and church in a way to make you manically worry about that fate. And he is there in the category of why bother with anything type thing. So you need to have that literary device in mind rather than develop a robust theology around that particular statement in that particular chapter. because he actually is going to say things which sort of contradict that very thing when he's trying to say what we can do in Christ and church. So Calvinistic Methodism is more actually based on one or two chapters of the Pauline epistles, extrapolated and developed into experiential Christianity, and particularly parts of Romans, which we're going to get to in a bit, which Calvin ran with, and then the 18th century revivals ran with even more. All right, here we go. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. A good reputation is more valuable than costly perfume, and the day you die is better than the day you are born. Not in 187 days, Sue Roberts. Better to spend your time at funerals than at parties. After all, everyone dies. So the living should take this to heart. Sorrow is better than, and remember, he also is using death to shake us out of apathy towards death, so we get prepping for the world to come. And if we don't, everything is meaningless. Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. A wise person thinks a lot about death, while a fool thinks only about having a good time. Better to be criticized by a wise person than to be praised by a fool. A fool's laughter is quickly gone, like thorns crackling in a fire. This is also meaningless. Extortion turns wise people into fools, and bribes corrupt the heart. Finishing is better than starting. Patience is better than pride. Control your temper, for anger labels you a fool. Don't long for the good old days. That's not wise. Wisdom is better when you have money. Both are a benefit as you go through life. Wisdom and money can get you almost anything, but only wisdom can save your life. We know that, Solas. We know that. We've just finished Proverbs, which is all about the wisdom personified. Accept the way God does things, for who can straighten what he has made crooked? Enjoy prosperity while you can. But when hard times strike, realize that both come from God. Remember that nothing is certain in this life. One more thing, Ricky B, about Calvinistic Methodism. A decent Calvinist wouldn't argue. They wouldn't be a fatalist, and they would take responsibility for each day. And they would take responsibility of spreading the gospel. They wouldn't be fatalist in like, well, God's predetermined everything, so therefore we don't even need to tell people about God or the gospel, because God has his elect and they're going to be saved anyway, so let's just retreat into prayer or something. A good Calvinist holds the responsibility of man in tangent with God's sovereignty and gets busy preaching the gospel. A hyper Calvinist is the abuse of the system, where it's like, well, God's in charge of everything. Don't ever challenge him. Don't even ask him. Don't even wrestle with him. Don't even do anything, really. It's all done. And that is that's more like deism. As Richard Dawkins would say, the grandfather in the sky who sort of winds up the clock and then legs it. I have seen everything in this meaningless life, including the death of good people and the long life of wicked people. So don't be too good or too wise. Why destroy yourself? On the other hand, don't be too wicked either. Don't be a fool. Why die before your time? Pay attention to these instructions, for anyone who fears God will avoid both extremes. One wise person is stronger than 10 leading citizens of a town. Not a single person on earth is always good and never sins. Don't eavesdrop on others. You may hear your servant curse you, for you know how often you yourselves has cursed others. I've always tried my best to let wisdom guide my thoughts and actions. I said to myself, I am determined to be wise, but it didn't work. Wisdom is always different, distant, and difficult to find. I searched everywhere, determined to find wisdom and to understand the reason for things. I was determined to prove to myself that wickedness is stupid and that foolishness is madness. I discovered that a seductive woman is a trap more bitter than death. Her passion is a snare, and her soft hands are chains. Those who are pleasing to God will escape her, but sinners will be caught in her snare. This is my conclusion, says the teacher. I discovered this long after looking at the matter from every possible angle. Though I have searched repeatedly, I have not found what I was looking for. Only 1 out of 1,000 men is virtuous, but not 1 woman. But I did find this. God created people to be virtuous, but they have each turned to follow their own downward path. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible Hour. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Life outside of Jesus and church, from this ancient teacher Koheleth to the gathered ecclesia, it's meaningless. Come to Jesus for life. On our YouTube page is tonight's service, including the message that Jesus is a little chef and why that's important. So tune on in to 1 Kings chapter 19. The children are going back to school tomorrow. We must remember to pray for that. So please, in your nighttime prayers, remember the little children going back. Do jump back to the start of Proverbs if you just jump in late, because it's important how to handle chapter 31 and the introduction for Ecclesiastes, and a little rant at the start about me trawling through streams and finding that very few people in church are actually focused on Jesus. They're more focused on sin, conviction, spiritual gifts, their history, experiences, or how other people aren't as good as them, but they dress it in spiritual terms. May we in Bible Hour be focused on Jesus. And if he convicts us of sin, we confess our sins only to get to know him more. And if he gives us gifts from above, we exercise them only to get to know him more and to build up his church in the name of the Lord. We will see you tomorrow.